How many sauropods can we fit into one episode? I'm ZSH Plays, and today we're building a huge complex of habitats in our Jurassic area in order to find out. Here at Jurassic World Northwest, our Jurassic Park area is coming along nicely, and I've left this huge space at the back for sauropods. But before we start building, we need to head over to our science center because the way our guests are going to access the Sauropod Valley is via the park tour. That is something we need to research, and we're going to be doing a lot of researching today because altogether we're going to be adding 7 dinosaurs into the park. And then we'll head over to last week's Dimorphodome because that is where the tour is going to start. This area here, just behind the Dimorphodome, is where the guests are going to get onto the Jeep tour. So we'll place down one of the tour buildings and then we'll start laying out the habitats and I'll explain the concept. The guests will exit the tour over here, just behind the Lagoon Resort, and this will also be where they exit from the Cretaceous as well. Once guests have gone into the Jurassic or the Cretaceous areas, they will be brought back to this central point where they can go straight into whichever area they didn't go into before. Now we're laying out the track, let's talk about what we're building. So Sauropod Valley is inspired by the Sichuan Basin map in the campaign. That was my favourite map when I played through the campaign, and there's a section where you have to build habitats for numerous massive herbivores, mainly sauropods, and that was a big inspiration for this build. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but we have pretty much finished the track here, and if we zoom out, we can't even see the whole of the area from this shot here. That is how big it's going to be. We'll move on to the fences now and talk about the rest of it. When I played through the campaign, I mostly just kind of placed down whatever the game wanted me to place down, just to see where the story would go. But on that map in particular, I liked how it looked so much. I really went to town on the build. I ended up building what looked like one huge habitat, but was actually split into several different habitats in order to keep all the sauropods happy, because they don't like to share territories. What we're going to do today is build an even bigger version of that. We're going to have 4 different sauropods in here, all from the Jurassic, of course. The first part of the habitat will contain Brachiosaurus, then we'll move on to Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, and finally Mamenchisaurus. And it won't just be sauropods either. Each one of the 4 quadrants that this habitat is split into is also going to contain a smaller Jurassic herbivore. We're going to have Gigant Spinosaurus, Kentrosaurus, Dryosaurus, and another couple of dinosaurs we'll talk about later. Now, it's traditional in these games to have the tours running right through the habitats, but to be honest, I do like to have some semblance of realism here, and driving your vehicle right next to something that weighs about 100 tons is not clever, so we won't be doing that here. The guests are going to be separated from the dinosaurs in the first 2 habitats by a cliff, and in the second 2 habitats by a big fence. We're using dry moats to separate the habitats themselves, and that is pretty much all the fences in, and as you can see, we have run out of power. We've only got 2 small power stations in the park, so we will quickly place in a large power station into one of our staff areas, reconfigure the fences and the concrete floors, and there we go, everything is powered, and we can get on to doing some landscaping. One of the key things that I want to achieve with this build is to make it look like one enormous valley with 8 species of dinosaurs living in it, rather than 4 separate habitats. We're going to mainly achieve that with trees and hidden moats, just to make sure that all the barriers are hidden. We'll send out a test car and just take a look, see how it's shaping up. This is the first area where the Brachiosaur will be, and even with barely any decorating done so far, it's looking pretty nice and we can't see any joins. And then round on the other side, where the Diplodocus and the Mamenchisaurus will be, we've got a lot more rocky terrain. We'll be at the ground level, so the full scale of these dinosaurs will be more apparent. That's the basics done. Time to start putting in the water, more foliage, start making this livable for the dinosaurs and much more attractive. So we'll get some water in here to the Brachiosaurus habitat, and we're going to join it up so it looks almost like a kind of oxbow lake kind of thing. And then we'll start polishing up all the cliff edges with some boulders to make them look more natural. And we'll do some of the rock terrain painting around the bottom of them as well. Don't want to erase all the grass here. Want to try and get a really natural mix between the 2 different textures. We've got all the water in. And each habitat now contains everything it needs aside from the food plants for the dinosaurs. So we'll get all of that in now. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the food plants could do with a bit of a polish in this game. The foliage that you can paint yourself and place down yourself is absolutely gorgeous in JWE3, but I feel like the food plants still look the same as they did in JWE2, and they kind of stand out a bit. They seem to be a lot more saturated and a bit more simplified. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That is the habitats built. Let's move on to the courtyard where the guests are going to enter this exhibit, starting with a viewing platform that we're going to turn into a viewing tree. With the enormous expanse of habitats we're building here, I thought it'd be great for the guests to be able to get a bird's eye view of it as well as being down on the ground on the tour. And I thought it'd be good to have that inside a sort of huge Jurassic style tree. So we're going to use one of the viewing platforms here. I've stripped away pretty much all of the pieces on it except for the bits at the very top. And now we're going to turn it into a tree. So this isn't going to be like a realistic tree that just happens to have a viewing platform that's stuck to the top of it. It's going to be very stylized, but hopefully it should look like the kind of giant fake tree that the park might build to put a viewing platform in. So I've surrounded it with some dead tree trunks just to give it a bit of texture. And now we're going to use this big dead tree multiple times to create an actual fake concrete style tree that the viewing platform can sit on top of. So once we've got a couple of these that cover up the what the trunk would be, we'll position them around the trunk and then we can copy them and rotate them round. And if we adjust the heights of each piece, we get quite a random kind of look of it, with the roots and the branches all combining to form branches of our fake tree. And we'll just keep doing that until we've got something that completely covers up the viewing platform. And then we're going to use bushes placed onto the ends of all the branches and the roots to make this look more like a tree. We'll place one of these on all of the branches until we've got something that starts to look more like a tree. And we'll also cover up the back side of the viewing. It only makes sense for the viewing to be in one direction here. There's not really anything to look at in the other direction. So we'll cover this up with some ivy. So you can only really see the front part of the viewing gallery, which is where people will be standing to look out over the Sauropod Valley. If you're enjoying this video, by the way, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you can get notified for the rest of the series. Just a few more bits of ivy to place in here, and that is the top sorted. Once we've done the tree part of it, then we'll customize the entrance part at the bottom. And in keeping with the rest of this Jurassic area, we're going to give it a very Jurassic Park kind of feel. We'll use some of the angular concrete columns that are a big part of the Jurassic architecture. And we're going to create a kind of L shape. Because the entrance is kind of on the right-hand side as you walk into this plaza, we want something to project outwards that tells people there's something here, which is where the classic mural from Jurassic Park comes in. We'll incorporate that into the walls, and then we'll just get some more interesting concrete pieces to cover up the facade of the basic piece here. It can be so difficult working with the basic pieces in the game to make sure that everything's usable, but once the park is finished and you can actually walk around it and go into a viewing gallery and see the view from inside the viewing gallery, go up into a viewing platform and see that, etc., I think it makes a massive difference rather than just having everything look perfect but also not actually be usable. Let's join the viewing platform onto the rest of the area. This is how it's shaping up, looking nice, and now we're going to turn this into a proper plaza that people can walk through to get to the Jurassic tour. We use some massive rocks and some smaller rocks to join the plaza onto the surrounding terrain, and then we'll start building some stuff to go into the plaza to make it look more interesting. And while we start tying this together and making it all look good, let's talk about the plans for the rest of the Jurassic area, because once this massive complex of habitats that we're building today is complete, we actually only have one more habitat to go into the Jurassic area. We've got one more dinosaur to put in here, which I'm really excited about. I've got a great idea for their habitat and what that's going to look like. So that will be coming along next week. And with that, the Jurassic area will be complete. At that stage, we will have 12 different species in the Jurassic area, which is really cool. Great selection of species to see in here. And then we will move on to the final major area in this park, the Cretaceous. But that is for the future. Let's start getting some stuff built for the plaza. The first thing I want is an impressive centerpiece. So we're going to take this sauropod statue, scale it up as big as it will go, and then place it on a big rock, and then have the name of the area written in front of it. So we'll have Valley of the Sauropods, and just arrange these letters to get some decent typography there. And then, as usual, we'll have it so that it's actually standing on some metal rods rather than just floating in midair. Always worth doing. And then we'll put some foliage behind it and a little bit of soil so that the foliage has somewhere to come from. A few rocks in front of it. And I think that'll make a really nice centerpiece. I also wanted some big Brachiosaurus statues to position around the area so they loom up over the guests and frame the view into here. Problem is, those are locked, so I actually had to go into challenge mode and complete one of the challenges, which is not something I'd normally do, but it was kind of fun, trying to build a park in 1 hour, and I succeeded. So now we got some big Brachiosaur statues looming up over the guests here, and we're going to use them again to do something else, which we did a little bit in the Allosaurus habitat, but I want to take it to the next level now, which is to have dinosaur footprints guiding the guests through this area to the entrance to the park tour and to the viewing tree as well. So we're going to do something that I've done in Planet Zoo quite a lot, which is just turn one of the statues upside down, and then have just their feet poking out so that we can have footprints on the ground. Not done this for a while. It's one of my favorite things to do in these games, and it works just as nicely in Jurassic as it does in Planet Zoo. For the park tour building itself, which you can see in the top right there, I've gone with the Jurassic Park themed building and then just modified it a little to suit our needs. I've covered it in ivy. We're going to place a little bit more of it on it now. I've got some vines in front of it. I've removed some of the wooden theming, which I didn't like, and made some improvements to the sign. But with it being Jurassic themed already, no need to reinvent the wheel there. And once we finish covering that in ivy and just giving it a bit more of a unique look, we're going to do the last thing that we need to do in this area, which is to get another little drink spot in. So right now, the only amenities in this park are the 3 in the entrance plaza, and our guests are starting to complain about that. We're still making a profit, so it's not a huge problem, but just from a realistic perspective, by the time they've got to this part of the park, they'll probably be wanting a drink. So we're going to get a Ginkgo's in here, and like we did in the entrance plaza, we're going to add our custom wood fascia to it, and change the color scheme to fit the area nicely, with a few more rocks and a few more trees. That's all we need to do. That sits in there really nicely. And as always, we don't want the trees just magically growing out of the concrete, so we'll put a patch of soil in underneath them, and then we'll get some of our little rock arrangements we've used throughout the park and just copy these and reposition these so they fit nicely around the trunk. That is the plaza complete. And now we need to head over to the Expedition Center because it's time to undertake our largest DNA extraction operation ever. We need to get 7 new species to fill Sauropod Valley. And once our expedition teams are back, we can start to create them. Possibly the coolest thing in these games is releasing the dinosaurs from the hatcheries. That is why we have a hatchery complex, and that is why I always release them into the hatchery complex and then airlift them into the habitat rather than airlifting them straight there. Here is our Mamenchisaurus. They are so majestic. We have so many dinosaurs to release now. We've got the Brachiosaurus coming in here. They're going to live with Dryosaurus in the first habitat to give a real Jurassic Park flavour. Brachiosaurus from the film and Dryosaurus from the novel. The way they just almost wade along even though they're not in water, with both the dinosaurs in shot there. Love that. Next up, we've got the Apatosaurus. I've given these a really classic green colouring, like early drawings of dinosaurs. I always think, possibly because they were a pretty early discovery, that they are one of the classic dinosaurs. And then Diplodocus, with the row of spikes down the spine in this game, which I really like. I've gone with a dark grey, almost elephant-like colouring for these, which I think works really nicely. That is our final sauropod. So now it's time for the gorgeous little Dryosaurs. Love these guys. Very similar to the Hypsilophodon, but larger, which is why we have the Hypsilophodons in the little habitat at the front. Then we've got Spinosaurus with their, well, gigantic spines. As bizarre as they look, I think they are paleo-accurate with those giant upward-facing spines. And then the slightly less impressive but still cool Kentrosaurus. And then the final dinosaurs that we're going to have in the Sauropod Valley are these guys, because unbelievably our Stegosaurus babies have already grown up. I feel like they were only born a few minutes ago, but there we go. We got too many of them in that habitat now, so these guys are going to live with Mamenchisaurus right at the back of Sauropod Valley. And now they're in place, we can check it out. Here's the beginning of the area with our viewing tree and Brachiosaur statues. And here is the start of the tour. There's a quiet, semi-wooded area here to get the cars into position before it begins. Viewing tree working nicely. We've got our guests up there having a look. This is what they're seeing. And here's the view from the car. We're just pulling round to the first habitat now. Let's check out the dinosaurs. Easily the largest habitat or habitats that we've ever built on this channel. But thanks to JWE's terrain and foliage tools, it really didn't take long. Into the second habitat for our Apatosaurs and the Spinosaurus. You can just see a couple of them there. They always seem to fight when you first put them into a habitat. I guess they're establishing dominance or something like that. And then there's a gate which leads into the third part of the habitat where the terrain slopes down, so the cars are now basically at ground level, which gives you a different perspective on the dinosaurs. The absolute size of the Mamenchisaurus, they're such amazing dinosaurs. And there you go, that is Sauropod Valley. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you again next week for the final build in our Jurassic area.